But still, Ethereum, it's slow, it's clunky, it's expensive. The majority of tokens launched upon Ethereum have been extractive. Don't get me wrong, like there's obviously certain protocols here and there that people use on a daily basis, but there's not been that killer application that can affect the lives of billions of people. So I went pretty heavy on Quant. You could only buy it on Bittrex back then. It was around $10. And then I rode it all the way up to $440. And then didn't sell because I was young and naive. I made life-changing money and I didn't change my life. So that is one piece of advice that I'll give to any like young investor or anyone really who's just starting out. Like when you make life-changing money, just remember to change your life. Because even though I had life-changing money, I ended up staying in the job that I didn't enjoy, working shifts, waking up at 5 a.m. every single morning, knowing that I could have made a difference in my life and my family's. I had to remind myself of the reason why I was doing this. The reason why I was investing, the reason why I was sacrificing my time, the reason why I was trying to understand these crypto projects. It was to become free geographically, financially, and also in terms of time as well. So when I was able to do that and I had enough money, I did it.
Welcome to the Ventura Labs podcast. Today, we're joined by Varimo, a mechatronics engineer at Rolls-Royce turned full-time crypto analyst. He shares his compelling journey into cryptocurrency from early bets on Litecoin, Solana, and Quant Network to his deep engagement with the Bittensor ecosystem. Varimo offers fresh insights into Bittensor's potential to transform AI and blockchain via subnets, the rising value of privacy coins, and his investment approach, which prioritizes team quality, networking, and calculated risks for long-term financial independence. Now, back to Varimo with the 45th Ventura Labs podcast.
Varimo.
All right, Varimo, how you doing, man?
I'm very well, man. Very good to see you.
Yeah, you as well. And let's just start, if you could introduce yourself and what is it that you do? You're a crypto analyst. What does this entail?
Okay, so I've been full-time crypto now for the past 3 years. So essentially, I'll just monitor trends and allocate capital and yeah, basically generate my revenue and my income through cryptocurrencies.
There you go. That's the dream, eh? That's what everyone aspires to be. So you started in crypto 3 years ago, or that's when you became full time in crypto?
Exactly, full time in crypto 3 years ago. Before that, I was an engineer at Rolls-Royce as a mechatronics engineer. I got an apprenticeship when I was 17 years old. And yeah, it took me 3 years to actually become a qualified engineer. The process behind that was pretty tough actually. There was maybe 20,000 applicants for that Rolls-Royce apprenticeship, and only 200 people got in. So I was very fortunate to get that opportunity because when you get an apprenticeship like that, I don't know if you have apprenticeships in the US, but in the UK, apprenticeships essentially allow you to study and get paid simultaneously. So I was earning money. Don't get me wrong; it was a very small amount of money. It was probably £12,000 in my first year at 17. But then each year, obviously, it slowly goes up. Yeah.
Yeah, I think apprenticeships happen in the US as well, but this would be more akin to an internship because it's more a skill position. What was your time at Rolls-Royce like? How'd you get into that field? What made you decide to go that direction at 17 years old?
So I'm from a very small city called Derby in the UK. There's not much here. We have Rolls-Royce, we have Toyota, we have Bombardier. So it's a very blue collar city. And Rolls-Royce just happened to be the best opportunity, in my opinion, for a young entrepreneur, mainly because it was giving me an opportunity to uh, learn within a great industry, engineering, and secondly, it was giving me an opportunity to earn money at a very young age. So, so yeah, essentially, I shot for the stars and applied for this job at Rolls-Royce, and I knew Rolls-Royce was going to be a great stepping stone for my future, um, because my goal was always to break out of the system. Let me just make that clear. So Rolls-Royce gave me the opportunity to earn enough capital when I was maybe 21, 22. And I'm not talking like crazy sums of money, but I just knew I wanted to do something bigger than just work for a 9 to 5. Um, and and Rolls-Royce allowed me to do that. So that's what I did. I saved all my money. I didn't buy any fast cars or clothes and go on expensive holidays. The goal was just to save as much money as possible and then figure out what to do after it. My initial goal was to buy property and get on the housing ladder because our parents, they had a huge opportunity to make generational returns on property purchases. But I was under the assumption that that ship had already sailed. So achieving my goal of financial independence and freedom by the age of 30 years old, which was my goal. I actually wrote this down in my journal when I was 20 or 21 years old. Um, Achieving that goal, I, I didn't think would be possible through property. And then I was a very social person as well back then. Like went on lots of holidays with my friends, cheap holidays, not expensive ones. Um, But there was one of my friends. His name was Antonio, and he was in forex and cryptocurrency. And he told me, essentially introduced me to crypto. So he showed me this thing called Litecoin, and I was like, "What the hell is this?" And he explained Bitcoin to me, and I was like, "Oh wow, like this is all sounding very crazy." To be honest, like I didn't really understand it. But anyway, I put like a few $100s into Litecoin, and then overnight this thing went up 20%, and I was like this is incredible. Because my mother and my father always used to tell me like 20% over the course of a year was an incredible investment, and all of a sudden I'm being able to generate these types of returns overnight. So after that moment, I was hooked.
And then how did the rest of your crypto journey go? What ecosystems were you big in before you became big on Bittensor?
Yeah, it's a great question. So back in 2017, I was investing in Solana pretty early. But back then, you couldn't really miss. Like, because it was such an infantile market, all of the assets in the bull run were pretty much just going crazy. So no matter what you invested in, you were going to do well. But fortunately, I caught Solana pretty early at around $2. I didn't hold it all the way to the top, by the way. I did pretty well in a short term period. But one of the main investments that I was really bullish on back then was a coin called Quant Network. Quant Network essentially are creating the payment rails for central bank digital currencies. And the CEO, Gilbert Verdian, he used to work for the Bank of England, the Federal Reserve, Her Majesty's HMRC, essentially. So his CV is incredible. Like he's the real deal. And when me and my friend came across him and the project as a whole, we were like, wow, this is incredible. Like all of a sudden, we've got a project here that has true fundamentals that is going to impact the traditional markets. So I went pretty heavy on Quant. You could only buy it on Bittrex back then. It was around $10. And then I rode it all the way up to $440. Um, and then didn't sell because I was young and naive. I made life-changing money and I didn't change my life. So that is one piece of advice that I'll give to any like young investor or anyone really who's just starting out. Like when you make life-changing money, just remember to change your life. Because even though I had life-changing money, I ended up staying in the job that I didn't enjoy, working shifts, waking up at 5 a.m. every single morning, knowing that I could have made a difference in my life and my family's. So sometimes in crypto and investing, you have to learn the hard way, and I certainly did that.
And then 3 years ago, what made you take that step to go full time into this crypto analyst uh, lifestyle?
Yes, yeah. I think I think having the positive feedback from the investments that I'd made over the previous years gave me the confidence to leave a very secure job, and also go against the status quo. Like, don't get me wrong, this was a very, very difficult decision. Like, my mum, my dad, they weren't very happy at all when I decided to leave. Because you have to bear in mind, in Derby, Rolls-Royce is deemed as this like job for life because people aspire to work there for, yeah, for their whole career, really. So it was a very difficult decision. I probably could have left earlier, to be honest. But I was kind of like, I felt bound to this company that was providing me this element of security. And because I'm a single child and I've come from a single mother, there is also this scarcity mindset that I have. I've seen my mum go through many, many struggles growing up. She was in an overdraft to put food on the table. And I guess seeing that scarcity also adds a little bit of fear in you to remove that security from your life, which you had for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Um, so, so yeah, it was the answer to your question. It was the we'll cut this out, but the answer to your question, I had to remind myself of the reason why I was doing this, the reason why I was investing, the reason why I was sacrificing my time, the reason why I was um, trying to understand these crypto projects. It was to become free geographically, financially, and also in terms of time as well. So when I was able to do that, and I had enough money, um, I did it.
And why would you say this freedom to become free? Why was that the ideal for you? Why was that so important to achieve?
Yeah, I just touched on it a couple minutes ago, but I think seeing my mother and also family members struggle so much with money growing up, I didn't want that to be the reality for me and also my future family. A little bit of insight into my mother and her family. Like she was born in Uganda, so my great grandparents left Uganda. My great grandparents left India on a sailboat, and they went to Uganda to work on the British railways. And my grandparents ended up having 10 children, 9 of which were girls. So they had the 9 girls before they had the one boy. So they were very resilient. And then Idi Amin, this evil dictator, he kicked all of the Indians out. So my mother and her whole family were homeless. They had to leave the country. So when my mum was 10 years old in 1972, she left Uganda for England, and they made a life for themselves in this country. And I think understanding and seeing firsthand the adversity that they went through and hearing all of the stories, it gave me this fire in my belly to try and do something different and improve my life and the life of my family as well.
And in this crazy journey, we somehow both end up at Bittensor. We meet at the in-game conference. So let's segue to Bittensor from that somehow. And when was it that you first encountered Bittensor? What were your first thoughts about finding the project? What was your first impression?
Yeah, so I remember seeing BitTensor. It was a couple months before ChatGPT came out. A friend had introduced me to it, and I remember doing some research on Twitter and also reading the white paper and just thinking about this concept of decentralized intelligence. This this protocol was following the same supply curve as Bitcoin, which I found interesting. I actually see myself as a narrative trader as well, so purely having the AI narrative teamed up with this Bitcoin narrative seemed like a very powerful narrative for me to get involved with. Secondly, listening to Const speak and Allah and hearing their passion was really, really compelling. I think especially Const when he was speaking about how the power of AI, if that is in the hands of a few corporations and a few people, that can be a really, really dangerous thing for humanity. So all of a sudden, I felt compelled to allocate some capital into this. One, to support the project, and two, because I believed in the longevity of the idea. Whether or not these founders could execute on this crazy idea was obviously up for discussion, and time would obviously tell. But yeah, lo and behold, a month or two later, about just a little rewind. Back then, you could only buy Tau on Bittensor.exchange, so you had to send Bitcoin to this random wallet address, and then just hope and pray that your Tau would arrive at the designated address, which was pretty scary. Obviously, I only used like a small amount of capital first, and then you slowly increase. But yeah, that's how early it was back then.
And back then, there wasn't subnets. There wasn't a lot of things we see today. How has your conviction changed or evolved over time as you have seen the underlying BitTensor protocol also change and adapt over time?
Sorry, just repeat that question again.
When you found BitTensor in 2022 to
Hmm.
what BitTensor is today in 2025, there's been a lot of differences in BitTensor back then to BitTensor now. What would you say your conviction has been like on that path from back then to now?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think because of the previous burns to my portfolio, Quant being one of them, I had Phantom very, very early when L1s were a hot topic. What else have I had? Sorry, wait, let me. I'm gonna restart. Um, okay, 1 second. Just
You
repeat
got
that question once more.
yeah, you got to remember the history of 2022 to
Yeah,
2025.
yeah, yeah.
So, BitTensor, back in 2022, there was no subnets, there was no detail. Detail wasn't even a conceived idea yet. There's very few people involved with the project. And now in 2025, there's Dynamic Tao, there's over 100 subnets, and you've been here through it all. How has your conviction in BitTensor evolved with the protocol since 2022?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the main thing for me is keeping my ear very close to the ground, listening to the OGs speaking about the updates within the network. Obviously, Const, Caro has obviously been a pivotal figure in the ecosystem. So for me, it was all about just trying to understand whether they were making headway throughout these multiple different updates. And there was a moment in time where I was very worried about the longevity of Bittensor when the cabal situation was a very prevalent thing where you had a small group of individuals mining tens of thousands of Tau. And to me, that's very damaging to the network because it wasn't built for that. It was built to create real world value that could help change the lives of many people. So, so that was a very worrying time. But then fast forward to 2025, all of a sudden DTAO arrives and those problems are no longer present. And I think Open Tensor Foundation and a few other BitTensor OGs have done an incredible job at rectifying that huge problem and now leaving the ecosystem to free market, the free market dynamics. And it's working really well from what I can see.
And these free market dynamics, Dynamic Tao is what now prices subnet emissions. Do you have any favorite subnets? I know you've mentioned TaoHash a lot on your X account. So what's your take on TaoHash?
Yeah, I think TaoHash is a very compelling idea. Utilizing the BitTensor incentive mechanism to mine Bitcoin in a more efficient, cost-effective manner, and then validators obviously receive this Bitcoin, and then they're incentivized to purchase the alpha token. So all of a sudden, you've got this flywheel effect occurring on that particular subnet. And also for me, what's really interesting about TaoHash is we can we can understand the true value just from looking at the dashboard. So if I remember correctly, the total value of Bitcoin mining per year equates to around $16 billion. Now, if TaoHash is accountable for 0.6% of that, TaoHash alone is generating $90 billion per year. Sorry, TaoHash alone is generating $90 million per year in revenue. And we're 30 to 40 days in to this subnet being live. Like that is incredible. So when we add a 10x multiple to that to try and understand the valuation of TaoHash as a subnet or as a company, you could argue that it is worth $900 million. And that's not including the growth that we're about to see in the coming months.
So you think TaoHash, the hash rate, the amount of Bitcoin miners they have will increase over the coming months?
Yeah, so I think that one of the largest Bitcoin miners currently is Foundry, which is owned by Barry Silbert, right? He's a Tau maxi. He's probably the largest holder of Tau. In my mind, it makes sense if Barry was to allocate a small percentage of their Bitcoin mining operations to TaoHash, because this is a win-win situation for him. All of a sudden, more eyes are on Tau, the value of Tau increases, the amount of capital that is swishing around in the subnet ecosystem increases. So this raises or rises the tide of the whole subnet ecosystem, and all subnets can benefit from this. Because when the price of Tau increases, it means the amount of emissions that these subnet owners get increases in terms of dollar value. So if the amount of dollars that they're receiving on a daily basis increases, That means they have more capital to invest in their ideas, in their marketing strategies, and in their teams. So, in my opinion, for a company like Foundry to get on board with this, it makes sense in many different avenues.
There has been a lot of speculation between the linkage of Foundry and TaoHash. But expanding beyond just TaoHash, what does your process look like for evaluating subnets, deciding which subnets you like, which subnets you don't like? Are there any other subnets that you would highlight? What is your evaluation process for these subnets?
Yeah, that's a really really good question. I find it really difficult to actually value subnets right now, if I'm being completely honest. I think a lot of my analysis comes from understanding the teams behind the subnets, because that then gives me confidence in those people delivering the vision. So, for example, if Const came out and he said he wanted to create a subnet, which he has done recently, this is why the value of that subnet is going to increase drastically, because Const, he is a trialed and tested founder and engineer, and we trust that he is going to deliver on what he does. So for me, the team is fundamental. That's why I love TaoHash. JJ and Voon are incredibly sharp individuals. But in terms of valuing, or in terms of evaluating other subnets, I'd like to understand their revenue model, how much revenue they are generating, how many users they have acquired. All of these metrics, I think, are really, really important when it comes to evaluating the long-term value of something. So that being said, I'm mainly allocated into TaoHash root, obviously, and there's another, sorry, I was going to say protocol, and there's another subnet called Liquidity, number 77, which has also been founded by a very talented founder, an engineer, creative builds. He he is the one that created. He is the person, or he is the engineer that created the bridge for Tao. So that was essentially the first liquidity event that the Bittensor ecosystem ever experienced, which is huge. So he essentially connected the Ethereum chain to Tau. And now all of a sudden, you've got $100 million worth of capital in this bridge. And that is just a testament to his knowledge and his skills as a developer. So when you have someone like that building a subnet and trying to solve a real world problem like thin liquidity in certain liquidity pools, I find that really compelling. And not to mention that this is also very, we can track the progress that this subnet is actually making. So similar to TaoHash, we'll be able to actually understand what the true value proposition is and the valuation of that particular subnet.
And then to take a step back a little bit, BitTensor as a whole, what would you say BitTensor is? A lot of people struggle to answer the question of just what is BitTensor. So what would be your answer for that? What is your understanding of what BitTensor is?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question because it's a very complex ecosystem and protocol. And I'm not technical. Like I surround myself with intelligent people who I'm constantly asking questions to try and further my knowledge. So I'm not a genius, but my understanding of BitTensor is I view it as this black hole, which is gobbling up all of the excess compute, open source models from the likes of Anthropic, Meta, and now you've got this really interesting mechanism of different subnets. And I view subnets as like a company. So you've got this mastermind, this Bittensor network, and you've got these 100 different companies all working on an individual vertical within artificial intelligence. Now, these miners who are contributing these pieces of intelligence are incentivized to provide good intelligence. If the intelligence that they provide is bad, then they don't get rewarded. So naturally, they're incentivized to be good because if they're not good, they don't get paid. So all of a sudden, you've got this competitive aspect to the ecosystem, which is helping the ecosystem grow at an exponential rate.
And how does, for example, like TaoHash, how has this black hole that has been created for, at first, artificial intelligence applied to something like Bitcoin hash rate? How does that look like?
Yeah, that's a very good question. This is probably a question for Voon, the developer on TaoHash, because I'd actually also like to understand how is AI being integrated into TaoHash, into actually mining these bitcoins from the network. Because at the end of the day, BitTensor was initially created to create a decentralized AI ecosystem. But that's actually why I found TaoHash really interesting because at the end of the day, this is a free market, it's free game. If you can utilize this incentive mechanism to create value and to create value to the whole ecosystem, then why not?
That's a good response. Why not? We'll get Voon on someday to go over TaoHash and the many more subnets that they have coming. Let's see. Let's see. What else? What else can we cover here? Subnets, TaoHash. Are you still looking at or involved with other crypto projects, or is your primary focus now on BitTensor?
So I see myself as a narrative trader, so I like to follow the liquidity, follow the money. Late last year in November, I'd say the market as a whole was completely dead, except for like Bitcoin was obviously showing some signs of price appreciation. But other than that, it was actually meme coins, like these AI meme coins, birthed from Goatsy, Truth Terminal. So I had some fun with that over the course of a few months. But since January, to be honest, I've just been enjoying time with friends, family, girlfriend, and mainly focused on Dynamic Tao and actually allocating my Tao into to certain subnets that I like. Even if it's for a trade, a short term trade, then that's fine. But if it's something that I believe in more long term, like the subnets that I've already mentioned, then that's also fine. But right now, I'm mainly focused on Tau. I'm currently looking into privacy coins as well, like Monero and Zcash. A good friend of mine and mentor told me about privacy potentially catching some steam over the coming years. And looking at the chart on Monero, it's looking very very promising. I think at one point in the in the last 5 to 10 years, I can't remember. I need to look at the chart to see exactly when. But Monero was pretty much a third of Bitcoin's market cap, or a quarter of Bitcoin's market cap, let's say. So even for it to catch up, even for it to catch up by a smaller percentage than what it was back then, I think you're looking at a huge price appreciation in Monero and privacy as a whole.
That's something you and Barry Silbert seem to have in common. He mentioned Zcash in one of his recent podcast appearances. What makes you so attracted to this privacy sector? Because those coins you listed have been around for multiple cycles now at this point.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm currently trying to follow the breadcrumbs myself to cultivate a strong opinion on this. But if you remember at the start of this conversation when I spoke to you about Quant and CBDCs, so when I invested in that project, I was under the assumption that CBDCs were coming in the next 2 years and I'm going to be filthy rich. But obviously, these things take a lot of time, and we're already at 2025. And I'm pretty sure over the next few years, we're going to be seeing CBDCs emerge. Then all of a sudden, our privacy in terms of the traditional payment rails that we use on a daily basis are going to be even more um, intrusive, shall we say. So, that being said, I think privacy, that's just one element. But that being said, privacy will have huge value going forward, in my opinion.
And being from that crypto world, did you ever, well, not did you ever utilize, what is your opinion on privacy tools such as, I think Tornado Cash is the name, and there's some privacy swap sites and token shielding, things of that nature?
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer. Because I think if you're part of a society where your other community members are paying their tax and contributing to whether it's the healthcare system in the UK, roadworks, things like that, all of these things need to be paid for, and I believe things should be fair. So if you're trying to use those tools to evade tax when your peers are obviously paying it, then I don't know. It's obviously it's a very difficult question. I do think privacy has its place, but I just think it should be used sparingly.
Outside of AI and privacy, are there any other sectors you find interesting or compelling at the moment?
To be honest, my main focus right now is AI and privacy. I spent 2 months in San Francisco, hoping to divest out of my crypto portfolio and write some angel checks to like tech founders, 90% of which are working in AI, which was another telling sign to me. Like that's where all the VC money is focused right now, like AI, AI, AI. So I think AI over the next 12 to 24 months is is going to have the largest AI in the next 24 months will have the largest capital flows in comparison to other sectors. So that being said, I'll just stick to where the money's flowing, and hopefully capitalize on that opportunity.
Yeah. And you just mentioned you spent 2 months in San Francisco. I know you recently spent a significant amount of time here in Austin. What is your motives for traveling like this? Is it just to exercise the freedom that you have, or is it always you're hunting for the next place to invest?
I think it's all of the above, really. Like I've always loved to travel. I've been very curious from a young age, and I think traveling allows you to gain new insights and new perspectives. And especially when you go to places like San Francisco, when you've got the highest concentration of talent in the whole world. For me, it was such an honor to spend time with these individuals on a daily basis I stayed in a hacker house with 14 founders and AI engineers, and I was able to see them operate and work on a daily basis. And I've been investing in these types of people for the last 8, 9 years, and to actually get to experience that was incredible. And there's one person from the house that I'm considering investing in. And he worked at a YC Combinator startup. He helped grow it to 80, $90 million valuation. He was the head of AI. So he's a very, very talented engineer. And he now wants to create an AI agent, which is connected to multiple different applications on your phone. It's aimed at people that are 60 plus. So people who aren't very tech savvy. All of a sudden you can go on this application and you can order your Uber, you can order your Uber Eats, you can order something from Amazon. So it's essentially what Siri should be, but he's gonna make it into an incredible application that is gonna help the 60 plus demographic. But then he wants to take that information and the AI models that he is cultivating and then embed it into robotics, robotics, like essentially like robotic carers. So this is a huge idea, and also the fact that he's even allowing me to have conversations with him to get on board with this journey. I feel really really blessed. Yeah.
And as someone that has been investing in the talent, the people, for 8 or 9 years, evaluating these people, you've seen some of the brightest people, like you're saying, out in San Francisco at the Hacker House. How do you evaluate that when you look at the talent that was at Endgame? What was your read on the Bittensor conference? What is your evaluation of the talent level of the ecosystem?
Yeah, no. First of all, Endgame was incredible. Like I felt like it felt like a dream, genuinely. Like to actually see all of those people that I was watching all over Twitter for, over the last God knows how many years, whether it was Will Squires and Allah, Mog, like being able to go to like a little cocktail bar with them and actually having conversations with them just felt like a dream. So first of all, I just want to give a shout out to Shad and everyone because you made my dreams come true in a sense. In a sense. Um, but in terms of the talent in the BitTensor ecosystem is nothing like I've ever seen before. Like you've got the most intelligent people from all walks of life trying to push the boundaries of AI using this elegant incentive mechanism that the Open Tensor Foundation have created. And then to actually see some of these ideas come into fruition and actually gaining users and generating revenue, for me is just so great to see. And not many crypto projects can say that. Like, I've been in the game now for 8, 9 years, and a lot of crypto is extractive. I'd say 99% of crypto is extractive. You've got Bitcoin, you've got stable coins, you've got Tao. Like for me, those three things are some of the best use cases of blockchain technology. Don't get me wrong, you could argue like Aave and Solana, they're paving the way in certain aspects, but we're not yet to see that killer application that is affecting the lives of everyday people. And I think BitTensor specifically has the opportunity to affect the lives of billions of people, you know, and that's pretty damn cool.
You don't have to towel pill me. I have a podcast about BitTensor. One name you didn't mention there was Ethereum. You said Bitcoin, stablecoins, and Tau. You skipped right over Ethereum. What is your thoughts on Ethereum, which I believe is the second highest market cap crypto the current moment?
Yeah, I think Ethereum has done many great things for crypto in terms of allowing us to expand our creativity and understanding of the technology, obviously using like smart contracts and things like that. But still, um, Ethereum, it's slow, it's clunky, it's expensive. The majority of tokens launched upon Ethereum have been extractive. Don't get me wrong, like there's obviously certain protocols here and there that people use on a daily basis, but there's not been that killer application that can affect the lives of billions of people. And that's why I'm in the space. That's why I'm actively investing in the space. That's why I'm actively traveling around the world and speaking to the smartest people, trying to figure out what that next protocol or application is. And I think Bittensor could be that.
And when you go to crypto conferences, I don't know how actively you go, but what are some things you look for when attending the conferences? What is your reason for going?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, the reason I go to crypto conferences is to speak to people who are actually building these protocols, and try and understand why they've built them. Try and understand like what is the total addressable market for this particular idea. And if I can speak to these people face to face, I can just have a much more organic, fluent conversation. Whereas if I'm messaging someone on Twitter or Discord, you just don't have that same flow. So for me as a person and an investor, that's what works for me. Like being able to actually be in front of people and speaking about my story, them telling me about their story, and just building that rapport, and then seeing how I can help them, and two, seeing what what they are actually building and what value proposition they have to see if I can get on board.
Okay. Well, one last question here before we cut things. What is your advice to investors in the crypto space at large and within Bittensor in the micro? What is your advice to crypto investors?
My advice to crypto investors is I don't want to give the generic answer that everyone gives, which is only invest what you're willing to lose, which to a degree is correct, but I think it's more complex than that because you have to take into consideration age. So any young aspiring crypto investor or even a normal investor, I'd say save as much money as possible, graft 7 days a week, literally 12-hour days, just figure it out. Like there's no getting there's no shortcuts in this game. It's like earn as much money as possible, save as much money as possible, make sure your burn rate is extremely low, and get into the arena and give it a go. The best way to learn is to actually do. And I think that changes with time. So as you get older and you get to your late 20s and your early 30s, all of a sudden your risk appetite should be falling because you've got more responsibilities. And that's why I think it's imperative for young people to be focused and have a more long-term perspective on their overall career and life. Because when you have that long-term perspective, you can then you can then act accordingly in your early years to then give you an advantage. Because someone like me from a very small city like Derbyshire, I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing. Like I should be at Rolls-Royce now. I should be working that 9 to 5. And the only reason I was able to break out of that was through sacrifice, doing all the overtime I could, starting my Indian street food business with my mom, and saving all my money. And number four, most importantly, taking risks. You have to take those risks because without those risks, there's no reward. And you'll never develop financial independence and financial security.
Well, that was beautiful. Thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me, Grant, and hopefully I'll see you in Austin very soon.
Absolutely.